The Xiaomi Mi 10 Lite Pro is one of the first phones to give us a periscope zoom camera in a mid-range or cheap device. So how does it stack up against the really expensive Mi 10 Pro? We've got the iPhone in here just to test the differences between them. The selfie camera is 16 megapixels. Don't think megapixels matter too much when it comes to selfie cameras though. What the Mi 10 Lite Zoom really focuses on is giving us that 5 times periscope zoom camera that we're seeing in a lot of more expensive phones. So Xiaomi are bringing it to the mid-range device with this phone. You get 5 times optical zoom and it goes into 50 times zoom, which is actually the same as the Mi 10 Pro at more than double the price. So how does it stack up against that phone in zoom? We'll come to that in a second, but first a selfie camera test. Side by sides, I noticed that all did a pretty good job with exposing the background that was really bright and my face with some natural shadow here. I definitely noticed that the Mi 10 Pro has a really wide angle on its front camera, whereas the other two are slightly more zoomed in. You do get 4K video recording on all of them, and stabilization between them, just walking like this, I think is pretty comparable between them. Definitely some big differences in the exposure of dark areas in the Mi 10 and the other two phones. There's no optical image stabilization on the Mi 10 Lite Zoom. In good lighting conditions, you should see some good results from every phone really these days. Definitely some slightly different colors on the Mi 10 Zoom to the other phones, but overall it's done a decent job. Dynamic range, that is the difference between the dark parts and the light parts, has been tested here. I actually think the Mi 10 Pro is just pumping up the shadows a little bit too much, whereas the Mi 10 Pro Lite, those shadows are darker. iPhone seems to be somewhere in the middle in terms of the shadows. Photography from Android phones is a strength of theirs, and really even with budget phones these days, you can just take really good looking photographs with phones. They do have a different style with the shadows and the highlights, but overall colors are pretty good, and I think there are just 3 good photos here. I can see compared to the Mi 10 Pro, because shadows on the Mi 10 Pro are pushed up, you get some slightly washed out colors in comparison to the Mi 10 Lite Zoom. It keeps the shadows a bit darker, which means that colors appear slightly more vibrant overall. This is definitely also reproduced in this image. The dark parts and the blacks in the image on the Mi 10 Pro are definitely lighter than that on the Mi 10 Lite. Colors seem a little bit more vibrant on the Mi 10 Lite as well. Zooming on Xiaomi phones just crops in on the main image sensor when shooting video, and it can create a lot of noise. And that's definitely reproduced here on both of the Xiaomi devices. I think there's slightly more noise and the image is falling apart a little bit more than the iPhone, even though those two phones do concentrate on zoom. But when you're recording video, it just records off that main camera, so you're not getting the benefits of the zoom cameras in video. It's really photo where the Xiaomi devices come into their own. The ultra-wide camera, again, the Mi 10 Pro, I think the shadows are being pushed up. They're a bit darker on the Mi 10 Lite. Zooming into the main image sensor, again, it appears to me that the iPhone's colors are a little bit more vibrant than the Mi 10 Lites here. You can see in the bottom of the picture where the sun is hitting that pink bush, maybe slightly overexposed on the Mi 10 Lite. But here's the big difference between the phones. Both the Mi 10 Lite and the Mi 10 Pro give you a 5 times zoom. Only the Mi 10 Lite uses a periscope camera though. The Mi 10 Pro just uses a secondary zoom camera to help with imaging at 5 times. Starting with the ultra wide, I noticed the sky appears much bluer on the iPhone. It's slightly whiter and more washed out on the Xiaomi devices. Also, the color of the tarmac is different. As we switch into the main sensor, I think the color reproduction from the Xiaomi phones has changed a little bit and actually come more into line with the iPhone. The iPhone does still have a different color though. 5 times zoom is optical on the Mi 10 Lite, and certainly Xiaomi call it optical zoom on the Mi 10 Pro as well. 2 times is the max for the iPhone, but at 5 times zoom, you're just cropping into that zoom lens. Looking at the original image files, I can see the Xiaomi devices are holding up pretty well against the iPhone, which has introduced some noise. But if you look at the background and the sky, I feel like the iPhone keeps a little bit more color in the sky. Can definitely still tell that it's blue. Whereas on the Mi 10 Pro, it's lost a little bit of that color. And on the Mi 10 Lite, it's lost almost all of the color, and that sky is just being blown out. 10 times zoom is the absolute maximum for the iPhone, and you're just starting with zoom on the other two phones. I can definitely tell, however, also looking at the original files, The iPhone is noisy and you're really pushing it to the limits. There's definitely a lot of noise comparatively compared to the other two. As we zoom in further, 20 times zoom now, the leaves and the tree on the right hand side of those images seems to be slightly blurry, losing a lot of detail. Is this the point at which the zoom cameras have just gone past the point of no return in terms of quality of an image? Maybe so. 20 times zoom on both of them. Definitely you can tell the image is falling apart. It does go on from here, so this is 30 times zoom and then into 40 times zoom, and in the next picture all the way into 50 times zoom. And it's impressive that you can get this sort of zoom range. Definitely two blurry images here, but considering how far away they are, it's definitely impressive to get it in the first place, but certainly paying that much for the Mi 10 Lite Zoom Edition. They did a good job in getting more or less the same sort of features that you get in the much more expensive Mi 10 Pro. Ultra wide video on the Mi 10 Lite can only be shot in 1080p. That's a restriction because of the sensor that they're using under the ultra wide camera. This is the iPhone, then moving into the Mi 10 Lite. The whole exposure is brighter, the sky is lighter, everything is definitely lighter than it was on the iPhone. So yeah, the light parts of the image definitely more overexposed than the iPhone, but also the dark parts of the image has been pushed up, whereas they are slightly darker on the iPhone. Moving into the Mi 10 Pro, it's somewhere in the middle between the other two phones. Slightly darker, you get a slightly richer blue color in the sky overall than you do on the Mi 10 Lite. There's also a dedicated macro sensor on the Mi 10 Lite, and Xiaomi certainly want to push macro sensors these days. I think it does actually a better job than the other two. It's a dedicated macro sensor, so you should be getting some better results. You can get closer to the object. There is also a high megapixel mode on the Mi 10 Lite Zoom, 48 megapixels versus 108 on the Mi 10 Pro. You get a deeper color on the Mi 10 Lite in those black areas compared to the Mi 10 Pro. I can just make out that the Mi 10 Pro is slightly higher resolution when really pixel peeping. It just seems to keep much more natural detail from that obviously very high megapixel sensor. So what do we think about the Mi 10 Lite Zoom? Well, certainly for not even half the price of the Mi 10 Pro, and a lot of those more expensive premium features are left out. But if zoom is important for you, then this is a mid-range phone at a good price with extra zoom range that certainly, even up to maybe 10 times, definitely can challenge the Mi 10 Pro in terms of clarity from that zoom camera. Subscribe for all the latest tech news and videos. That's it for now, but I'll see you in the next one.